Welcome back to our special on the First TV, Lost Civilizations. I want to go to one of my favorite guests, one of my favorite people, Spencer Klavan, his podcast, Young Heretics. Go listen to that and read his 2 books. Most recently, Light of the Mind, Light of the World, Illuminating Science Through Faith. Go get that one. And then the one before that, How to Save the West, Ancient Wisdom for 5 Modern Crises. Our expert in ancient civilization. What better person to talk to about lost civilizations? Spencer, how you doing, brother?
Mike, buddy, it's great to see you. It's not every day that somebody calls you up and says, I'm doing a news show about ancient civilizations. This is like, put me in, coach. I'm ready. Let's do it.
And if you want to talk about ancient aliens, you can bring that up too. It's whatever you want. It's fair game.
I had a conversation with my cab driver the other day, actually. Now that you mentioned it.
Perfect. And then bring it back to the Bible in the end. Come on now. All right, well, let's do this, Spencer. So when I mentioned lost civilizations, what's kind of the first thing you even think of?
So the very first thing that comes to mind is this amazing passage in Plato's Timaeus. This is kind of a deep cut. This is like a sequel to the Republic, which everybody knows. And it's a story about the Greek sage Solon of Athens, who was one of the kind of originators of Greek philosophy. So we think of him as the ancient world, antiquity. This is like way, way back in the before times, more than 2,000 years ago. But the story goes that Solon traveled to Egypt. And in Egypt, Solon talked to the priests. So, the pyramid guys, the guys that wrote in the hieroglyphs. And we know this too. And Solon asked them about the origins of the world. And they laughed and laughed. They laughed this Greek philosopher out of town. They said, you Greeks, you're like children. You don't know anything old. Everything that you believe is from about 5 minutes ago because you're constantly getting flooded away and having to rebuild the world. But we Egyptians, we have real antiquity here. We have actual old stuff. And, if you think about it, we are closer in time to Cleopatra than Cleopatra was to the builders of the pyramids. So when you pull back the camera, you realize we don't even understand, especially as Americans, there's that Eddie Izzard routine that they were building Disneyland in Paris and they were building the castle. And somebody comes up to the builder and they say, you'd better make it a bit bigger. They've actually got them here, as compared to America where everything is from about 5 minutes ago. So I think it's something that really pays to take stock of just what an enormous timeline we're living on and how many civilizations have risen, fallen, and been wiped off the map in all that time.
Wow, I love that. And it's amazing. Those ancient Egyptians, what were the differences, though, in what they believed? What was so ridiculous about Solon that he got laughed out? And what were the ancient Egyptians believing? And then let's bring some Bible into this. What does the Bible say?
Absolutely. Well, what's really remarkable to somebody like me who spends a fair amount of time kind of buried in musty books, studying all these guys, the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Akkadians, all of these different empires that have come and gone. And Herodotus, the first ever historian, says, even in my lifetime, many cities that were great in my youth have become small. Many cities that were small in my youth have become great. You start to get this big perspective on history. And one thing you really notice is that basically all of these cultures have almost the same kind of story about where we're going, how the world was created, what our place in the universe is, except for the Bible. We don't realize, because we're so used to the Bible, we don't realize that the Bible is unique. It's almost like a kind of revisionist history, because if you read the other creation stories from around the same time and afterward, you read Hesiod's Theogony that has the Greek creation story, or you read the Enuma Elish, which has the kind of Sumerian and later Assyrian, Babylonian creation stories. They all start the same way. They start in the beginning, there was chaos. And chaos is a Greek word that just means emptiness, void, nothing. And then out of the chaos, you got all of these different gods. So you got the god of love, you got the god of lightning bolts, you got the god of popcorn, you got whatever, all these different forces in the natural world. And they're at war. They're fighting because no one of them is naturally supreme. And then eventually what always happens is some god makes it to the top. In the Greek pantheon, it's Zeus. For the Assyrians, it was Ashur. For the Babylonians, it was Marduk. And usually it's the God that is associated with whoever is in charge on earth right now, because these are stories about how our political order reigns supreme. They're origin stories about why the current king is blessed by heaven. The only story that doesn't go this way is Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, God. Those first words are a radical reversal of the other origin stories, because it proposes that the beginning is not chaos, not formlessness, not void, but a mind with an order in mind for creation. And then he brings the wastage and the formlessness into being. He creates tohu vabohu, the formlessness and void, and his spirit broods over it and starts to shape things and call things into being. So there is an absolute, undisputed order that persists no matter who's in charge, no matter which king happens to be ruling right now, no matter who's got the support or the biggest club or the biggest sword or whatever. Through all these risings and fallings of civilization, God alone remains supreme. This is the idea that the Jews carried through the rise and fall of all these other histories. This is how they, I believe, persisted even when they were conquered by the Babylonians, even when their temple was destroyed. And this is how these ideas in Christian form now maintain their presence all over the world, while all these other kings and gods and rulers have come and gone.
Oh, it's amazing. Wonderful. Is it not profound of a thought enough to think that the uniqueness of that Genesis story speaks to its truth?
Well, I mean, that's like a very obvious conclusion that I think we should probably draw. Yeah, it's an argument in favor of it for sure. I don't think it's unprofound at all. I mean, we don't have proofs of faith, I don't believe, because we are invited to have faith, right? There is always the possibility that we're just monkeys kind of like dreaming bad dreams because of our evolutionary impulses. But what I will say is that you reach a point at which, in order to believe that this is all just random and it just happens to have survived and all that stuff, in order to believe that, you basically have to give up your belief in all truth altogether. Like when you chase materialism and evolutionary theory down to their bottom, if there's nothing else besides that, and you just want to be a new atheist and you just want to think that all of these things are social technologies merely for propagating the species, and they happen to scratch a mammalian itch in the brain, and that's why they've endured, not because they are inherently more true than anything else, then you can make that claim. But it also means that everything you believe is just something that you happen to think because of your brain chemistry. So there's no reason to have the conversation at all. I really do think those are the two options. Either it's chaos at bottom and nothingness, or there is an absolute truth. And not coincidentally, that is actually the alternative that the Bible presented to the world. That's the oldest binary choice in history.
Oh, that's great. Okay, we got like 3 minutes or so. I could ask you a political question, but read the book. Everyone needs to go read How to Save the West, and you can get the answers there. So let me ask you more spiritual biblical questions. So C.S. Lewis quote, which I've always liked, he says, if you focus on the past, then you'll be riddled with regret. If you focus on the future, you have anxiety. So instead we need to focus on the present, which is what touches eternity. Now, I like that. And I look at the modern self-help movement, which is all about the now, and kind of our American culture is now, the moment, live in the moment, whatever. But we're missing the touch with eternity part. And that's one of the main things I want to get across as a special, is focusing on eternity. Do you have any wisdom here? And is there ancient wisdom on that we can gather from looking at lost civilizations and the ancient books?
Absolutely. Well, to go back to that moment with Solon and the priests, I think one of the things that the Egyptian priests knew that the Greeks had to learn is that these clashes of the moment, these things that roll across our Twitter feed, they come and go. And it's not that they're not important, but they're important because they contain seeds of eternity, because the moment right now is the only place where we touch upon absolute reality. Everything else is either in the memory or in our expectations and our hopes and our fears. T.S. Eliot, the great Christian poet who obviously lived in modern times, said that there are these flashes we have when the present touches eternity, and we realize that there is in every moment there is a kind of connection with cosmic truth. But in order to know that, I do think you have to have some historical context, which is really the main thing that we're missing right now. Is like everything is happening right now and nothing has any historical context. We have no memory. The point of studying this stuff, the point of learning, is to learn what comes in and passes out and what things endure and are eternal, because those are the things that are going to matter.
Very good. Spencer Klavan, everyone go listen to the podcast, Young Heretics, and pick up the books. Where else should people go, Spencer? Where should people follow you and learn more about you and read all the books, etc.?
They should head to Substack at rejoiceevermore.substack.com, and they can get all sorts of goodies there, including my writing.
Wonderful. Rejoice evermore. All right, go do it. Wonderful. Spencer, great to talk to you as always, brother. Thank you.
Mike, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.